Well, we'll make the segue to the topic of the evening that many wanted to talk about, and that's hydrofracking. Oh, I'm sorry, Deb.
I believe the question was about zoning and low-impact industries to relocate in Dryden. From my perspective, the biggest issue with the zoning is something that's been introduced late in the game called a critical environmental area. I don't know if any of you have seen that map, but the critical environmental areas have been designated 65% of the town. They say that there's no connection, there's no reality, it's just for educational purposes. I caution you, because I went to a meeting where the state said that when you go to get your zoning permit, that zoning permit, you go online and it's automatically going to connect you to the critical environmental map to let you know whether the property you want to invest in is part of that critical environment. So I'm not sure. I don't think people want to, are concerned. I think people are concerned about investing in areas where it's identified as a critical environmental area.
All right, so well, let's move on to the questions about hydrofracking and gas drilling. No doubt you will not be surprised to know that we've received most of the questions on this topic. Some of them I need to combine because they touch on similar themes. This one I'll combine. Would you keep the ban on gas drilling in the zoning ordinance, or would you use the power of your office to overturn that ban by removing it? This one starts with Mr. Schickel.
Well, let me be clear. As supervisor, I would have a single vote out of 5. Okay, so a supervisor doesn't have the authority to act on their own in that capacity, certainly. As far as the gas ban, this was an unnecessary burden that the town has taken on. We did not have to do this, and I think we should have waited and see what happened regarding New York State's regulation. When they haven't put out the regs yet, we need to see what's going on, see where they're going with it. And the problem is that we put a target on our back, and we're having to foot the bill for defining what the legal authority of a town is. And I'm saying if we had simply waited, we wouldn't have needed to do that. As far as whether I would move to overturn that, that's something that we'd have to take up with a new board.
Whether we had acted when we did or not, our zoning does not allow gas drilling. We have permissive zoning. It's a legal term that means anything that is not specifically allowed is prohibited. So the action we took in August did not change anything. It clarified that. It made it real easy to read for the DEC and the gas companies. Saying that somehow brought on this lawsuit is like saying we were wearing our skirts too short. We didn't bring this on. We were the 20th or 22nd of local municipalities to pass a similar regulation. We were clarifying the zoning we have. If we wanted to change the zoning and now say, oh, look, our zoning we didn't allow for gas drilling when we wrote this 40 years ago, we better change that now. That would be a change. That would be difficult to do. It's not what we did. We have never allowed that kind of heavy industry, and we're not going to allow it until we know that we can manage it safely.
I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I am not in favor of gas drilling. I think that some of the Democrats have put that on here. We don't sit here and say we're in favor. Am I against the ban? Yes, I am. But not because I'm for gas drilling. I think we have to look at gas drilling. My opinion is that the state's going to make decisions about gas drilling. We have to make decisions about how to manage it in our town, should it be allowed. And that's what we have to, that's the most important thing. We have to plan ahead, we have to think about what the concerns are going to be, and we have to plan for them. When the state makes the decision, then we can move forward and understand what our reality is going to be. They may make the decision not to allow it, but I don't know that.
Well, I have to say that I'm sorry for looking surprised at Deb's statement that she is not in favor of hydrofracking. Everything she has been quoted as saying in the newspaper that I can see seemed to suggest that she was. And I found it offensive given the number of people who are sorry that they felt tricked into having signed leases that are very compromising, that don't let them build a concrete pad for their garage or dig a basement for their addition because Anschutz says they cannot, because they sold that right for a mess of porridge. And Deb said, too bad. Those people should have read the contract better. They should have gotten a lawyer. I found that really disturbing. I want to say that this is not a ban. It is exactly what Marianne said it is. And that this was totally timely because not only have others joined in on this, we had to shut the door before Nellie got out. There was no other way to protect ourselves. And the fact is that New York State has now conceded that it really isn't ready. And so we are not giving out permits in 2012. It won't be till 2013. But they did that because we fought back. We must push back against the gas industry.
Do you think the town's zoning ban on drilling was, quote, picking a fight when it was not needed, or do you think it was a necessary fight? It starts with Marianne.
It goes with Bruno. She ended.
Are you first this
It
time?
goes back and forth. She ended, now it goes to you.
You're so
Yeah, right. Okay. Bruce, would you read that question again? Would you answer that question for me? No, just
My job's hard enough. Do you think the town's zoning ban on drilling was, quote, picking a fight when it was not needed, or do you think it was a necessary fight?
I don't think it was picking a fight. I really don't. I don't think the town was trying to pick a fight. I just think that they didn't think this through. I really don't think they thought it through well enough to consider all the possibilities. I think it was rushed. And I think the result is that they're not only putting themselves in the position of having to foot the bill for this, but they're also putting themselves into potential liability down the road. And let's say they ban it, and suddenly Anschutz is out of that $5 million or whatever it is. They're going to come back at them again and say, well, you took my property, now you got to pay for it. And guess what? We don't have $5 million in the bank to pay for it anymore. We don't have it. It's gone. It's spent. And it's interesting that Linda says that it's not a ban. Well, what's the sign there for if it's not a ban? But our signs are up, deficit spending, say no, it's deficit spending.
Repeat the question again, please.
Yes, did we pick a fight?
Repeat the question, please.
Do you believe that the town's action was picking a fight when none was needed, or a necessary fight?
Well, I don't know if it's a fight at all. And I'm really surprised to hear Bruno saying that we rushed into it when we had been studying this for 3 years. As soon as we started getting reports from Pennsylvania, we started looking at the things we would need to do to protect ourselves from what we thought at the time was inevitable gas drilling. I worked very actively with a group at the Tompkins County Council of Governments, the gas drilling force that started with that mission exactly, how to help municipalities protect themselves, how to deal with the impacts of gas drilling. It was a necessary action. I have a lot of respect for the DEC. They certainly do a better job than the DEP did in Pennsylvania. But I can't believe anybody in this room thinks the state's going to take care of us. That's our job. We know what our needs are. We know how to protect them. We're going to do it.
I don't think anybody tried to pick a fight, but I do think that the ban was unnecessary. The DEA I always get these letters wrong. The DEC has studied this for multiple years. The first review I saw was 3 years ago. We complained about it. It went back to the board, and they reviewed it, and they've made changes based on our statements, based on our concerns. They continue to review it. It's gone back to the board again for another review. They have now put down the hammer and said we're not going to allow it in 2012. It's moved off to at least 2013. So I think it was unnecessary and it was a little premature.
Well, I may be naive here, but I think this is largely a political battle, and it is a David and Goliath battle. Anschutz is what, the 79th richest man in America versus the town of Dryden. And the fact is that without our pushing back, town by town, city by city, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, New York City doesn't have to worry, or they would have already clearly put their foot down. Without that pushback, the billions of dollars that these bullies wield, the largest industry in the world, would be stamping on us and doing whatever they wish, and we would count for nothing. This Democratic meeting would count for nothing if Anschutz was in charge. Look what they've done in Pennsylvania. Look what they're doing, in fact, in North Dakota. The government of North Dakota is trying to have a special session to say, hey, we should have some say. And we don't have the right to regulate, only to ban. So they should understand that. If they don't, they shouldn't be governing.
Thanks. I have 6 questions that all sort of revolve around a similar topic here, also with fracking. And they have to do with lifestyle issues and other types of things that might happen should fracking be allowed in the town. So I'll try to combine these into one succinct question. But if fracking is allowed, what does the town board need to do to protect Dryden's lifestyle, its water, its property values, and the potential for increased crime that has been seen in other states where fracking was going on now?
I do that these times. These really are the big issues. We hear a lot about the risk of toxic accidents, and that's very serious and alarming. Even if that doesn't happen, some of these lifestyle changes definitely will. The first drilling rig doesn't look that bad. It's only there for a few weeks. Well, the construction of the drilling pad, of course, adds quite a bit to that, and the road that leads to it. And then come the hundreds of trucks that bring the water for the fracking, and then they drill it. If it's successful, they drill a second well on the same pad, up to 8 wells on the same pad, each of which brings, one after the other, brings hundreds of trucks in for fracking. We heard Linda refer to the Jake breaks. Thousands. I've heard tons of complaints from residents about the brakes on the trucks on the state highways transporting garbage. Multiply that by 100. Think about the intersection in the village of Freeville that's in the village of Dryden. That's 3 state roads. I'm thinking that's going to be a main route. We are taking action to write road use protection and aquifer protection and I just can't go on about this, but there are a lot of things that we are addressing at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you. As far as the lifestyle, and that's sort of a funny word when you're talking about fracking, but I guess it's a question of the impact and how it affects us. I think the highway law, I think we need one. And I was quite involved with Dennis Mix in talking with the county about their crafting of their highway law. And I think they have a reasonable start. I think it could have been better. But I think we taxpayers, should not be footing the bill for any damage due to heavy trucks on the road. And I think that's a very reasonable thing. I do think that the truck traffic, the traffic in general, I think is going to be one of the largest impacts if gas drilling is happening. That's the framework of the question. If it happens, that's going to be the biggest disruptive thing that we're going to immediately face. And I think to try to have that lessened, and anything we can do to have that slow, incremental, is important. And that's where I stand.
Okay. Well, I guess I would first want to say that people who are undecided about this issue should really be immersing themselves in the literature, should be really finding out and not avoiding the subject of what's going on in Pennsylvania and Texas and all these other places. We have this tendency toward polarization and only reading the websites that agree with us. That's a really unfortunate aspect of contemporary technology. But the people who really are not informed well enough about fracking really need to look into this. In the meantime, somebody got killed from Elmira the other day, hit by a drunk driver driving a company truck in Bradford County. How many casualties would it take for us to think that this was not how we wanted our lives to be? We talked about a traffic light near the high school to protect children in Dryden. Do we really want to invite all these trucks on our roads? What would that traffic light do for us? And we are working toward all these other things like road use protection and stormwater protection in the meantime.
As I said before, the state is making a lot of decisions, and I agree that we need to do as much planning as we possibly can for every piece that we're concerned about. Certainly, we need highway laws, we need rules and regulations where we can put them in place. But we also have to understand what we can and can't regulate. And the state will give us lots of information on that. The water is an area that the state is writing multiple rulings on, and in fact is doing a study on currently. There have been multiple studies on it, and they continue to study it, try to find out exactly how best to manage it. It is a concern. I don't think anybody here doesn't recognize that concern and want to plan for it if it comes.
Don't give it to
Okay, we'll do this as a lightning round because we needed to, make up a 30-second question here for the 90-second we invested in earlier. So I think you could probably do this with a yes or no response. Have you leased your land for hydrofracking?
Should we just each say it? Yeah. No.
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 I have not leased my land for gas drilling, no.
No.
Well, let's go to the why not. Okay, we'll just give a few more seconds to the why nots. Start with Marianne.
Some of you remember, is it 20 years ago now, maybe more, when the county was thinking of siting a landfill in West Dryden? That's where I live. My back 40 was part of one of those sites. It broke my heart as we struggled to find some other way to deal with the landfill. And thank heavens, at the last minute, the county, with some help from local leaders, did. But I visualized the same thing happening. I sat on the porch the other day and tried to see where a road to a gas pad would go that it wouldn't disturb my daily life. I'm not leasing my land, and most of my neighbors are not.
I think the reason is that I looked at this the way I looked at everything else, in the way I approach business decisions, lots of life decisions. I take my time, and I look at it very carefully, and I want to do things very incrementally. And when I see everybody rushing in and going in one direction, I usually say that's not the direction I want to go.
I only own 4 acres of land in Dryden. I don't think anybody's interested in it. Nobody's ever asked. If I was asked, the answer would still be no. I don't think it's, I'm not, as I said, I'm not in support of drilling. And so I wouldn't sell my rights.
I am not a landowner in the town of Dryden due to a recent divorce. So, therefore, my answer is no. But if I'm looking to buy some land, and if I did, I guess I'm the same line as Bruno. It'd take me a long time to think about it. I mean, not just leasing it, but every decision concerning land should be well thought out. And in my personal opinion, nature should be as it is.
Well, actually, that's an easy answer for me. The reason that my 100 acres, which is a substantial amount and was indeed asked for by the snake oil salesman who came around, was not leased to them because my husband is smart. And he went to meetings of cooperative extension, and he talked to other people who he thought might be helpful in figuring this out. And we actually, because of him, figured out that this was really treacherous and unknown territory. And I thank him for that. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by people who have leased their land, and we are very vulnerable to our environment being ruined.